I never thought one ordinary evening could change everything about my life. I had just finished another long day, my hands sore and my feet aching, and I was walking home like I always did. The streets were cold, and the wind cut through my thin jacket like tiny knives. I walked fast, head down, hoping to get home before the sun completely disappeared behind the grey clouds. My little house at the edge of town wasn't much, but it was mine. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked, and the heating barely worked, but I was used to it. Every day I did small jobs just to make sure I had enough for food, to pay the tiny bills, and sometimes, if there was a little left, to save. Not much, but enough to keep going. People walked past me without noticing, or they just glanced at my worn shoes and tired face and decided I didn't matter. Most days, I agreed with them silently. I was invisible, just another girl trying to survive. But that evening, something was different. I had barely taken a few steps from the street corner when I saw him. He was sitting on the sidewalk, hunched over, shoulders shaking not just from the cold, but from exhaustion, from life itself. His clothes were torn, dirty and wet in places, and his hair was matted and greasy. Most people would have walked past him without a second thought. Everyone else did. I could feel them glancing, looking away, pretending not to see him, and my stomach twisted at how cruel the world could be. But I couldn't. Something inside me refused to let me ignore him. I slowed my steps, my heart pounding in a way I couldn't explain. There was a raw, broken honesty in his eyes that cut through the chill in the air. He looked at me, not pleading, not asking, just holding a kind of quiet resignation that made my chest ache. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to help him. I felt like if I didn't, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small sandwich I had saved for myself. My hands shook, but I walked closer and handed it to him. He looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of surprise. Then he nodded softly, murmuring a quiet, "Thank you." That was it. No grand words, no dramatic gestures, just a simple moment, but somehow it felt like the world had stopped around us. I'm just glad someone cares," he whispered, though I couldn't tell if he meant me or anyone at all. And something in that whisper made me feel like the whole world was heavier than I had ever imagined. I offered him my small jacket, though it barely covered me. He hesitated, looking at it as if it were the most precious thing anyone had ever given him. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was watch him, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope that this small act might matter, that it might somehow mean something bigger than just a sandwich or a jacket. I ended up inviting him to my home for the night. I wasn't sure why I did it. Part of me was scared, and part of me thought maybe this was a mistake. But something told me it wasn't. That night, we walked together, him silent, me talking softly, trying to fill the uncomfortable quiet. His eyes kept darting around, noticing everything but saying nothing. I remember thinking how strange it was that someone so broken could hold so much mystery in their presence. There was something about him, a hidden strength I couldn't place, and I didn't know it yet, but that moment would become the turning point of my life. When we reached my small home, I offered him the only spare blanket I had. He hesitated again, then smiled faintly, a smile so brief it could have been missed if you blinked. That night, I lay in my own bed, thinking about what I had done. I felt proud, scared, nervous, and a strange thrill I couldn't explain. I didn't know it yet, but this man, this seemingly broken stranger, was going to change everything I thought I knew about life, kindness, and the world. The next morning, I woke up to find him gone from the living room, which was normal enough for someone who had only come to rest. But then I noticed the envelope on the table. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was a note, and it wasn't just a thank you. It said more than words could capture. It hinted at a secret, something I could never have imagined. I stared at it, heart racing, and felt the first real pulse of fear mixed with curiosity in a long time. What had I stumbled into? Who was this man really? And what did my choice to help him mean in the grander picture of my life? I didn't sleep much that night, turning over the questions again and again. I kept thinking about all the times I had passed people on the street, all the times the world ignored someone's pain, and all the small, unnoticed acts of kindness I had done. But this felt different. This was real. This was the moment where a simple choice revealed the hidden, astonishing truth that no one could have predicted. Sometimes, life's smallest choices change everything. Sometimes, opening your heart to someone who seems invisible can uncover secrets that alter your world completely. And sometimes, just sometimes, those choices lead to truths you could never have imagined. Truths that are bigger than you, bigger than your fears, and bigger than anyone could see from the outside. That night, I realized I wasn't just helping a stranger. I was about to witness something that would shake the foundations of everything I thought I knew. And I couldn't wait to see what would happen next. I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope. My hands kept trembling every time I looked at it, as if it was holding a secret too heavy for me to carry. I finally gathered the courage to open it, my heart thudding in my chest like a drum. Inside, there was a single piece of paper with a few words that made my beat sear. Wreath catch. You have shown kindness when it was needed most. Trust me, your life is about to change in ways you can't imagine. Wait and see. That was it. Nothing more. No explanation, no hint of who he truly was. Just a promise that something extraordinary was coming. For the rest of the morning, I paced my small living room, trying to make sense of it. Who was he? Why had he come into my life? My mind raced through every interaction, every glance, every quiet moment we shared the night before. Nothing about him had screamed wealth, privilege, or power. He had been broken, fragile, invisible to the world. And yet, this note hinted at a life far beyond my imagination. I tried to go about my day, working at the cafe as usual, but I couldn't focus. Every sound, every passerby, every word my co-workers said seemed distant. My thoughts were consumed with him, the man who had sat silently on my couch, eating the meager breakfast I had managed to make. How could someone who looked like him possibly have a life filled with secrets so incredible? My curiosity mingled with fear. What if I had misread everything? What if this was a mistake? That afternoon, the doorbell rang. My heart leaped into my throat. It was him. He was standing there, dressed simply but clean. And for a moment, I couldn't reconcile this version of him with the man I had met on the street. There was a quiet confidence now, an energy I hadn't noticed before, and I realized I had never truly seen him for who he was. I hope I didn't startle you, he said softly, his voice calm, but somehow carrying weight that made me take notice. I shook my head, speechless. He smiled faintly, almost apologetically, and stepped inside. My small home felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. We sat together, and he told me things. Small stories at first, lit, till glimpses into his life. Stories that seemed ordinary, but each one had a subtle weight, a hint of something greater. I realized I was listening to someone who had seen the world in ways I could barely imagine. His voice was steady, but it carried an intensity that made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask questions, to pry into his life, but I hesitated. There was a pause, a moment when it felt like the air itself was waiting for me to take a step forward or step back. Then came the moment that shook me to my core. Without warning, he leaned forward and said, "I'm not who you think I am. The man you helped, he doesn't exist in the world as you see it. I am the man you saw, yes, but I'm also someone else entirely. Someone powerful, someone who carries responsibility that most people can't imagine. And I've been watching you." I stared at him, my mind spinning, words failing me. Watching me? What did that mean? Why? I could feel tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, not just from shock, but from a strange sense of understanding that something bigger than me was unfolding. This wasn't just a story about kindness anymore. It was a story about life, fate, and choices that could ripple far beyond what I had imagined. He explained more, slowly, carefully, and I began to understand. All his years on the streets, the poverty I had assumed, the invisibility, it had been part of a test, of a journey, of an experience he needed to see human kindness at its purest. And I was the one who had shown it without hesitation. Every act of goodness I had performed, every little moment I had reached out to someone invisible, had led to this. My emotions surged. Fear, disbelief, awe, and something like hope, all tangled together. I realized how small my world had been, how narrow my expectations, and yet how powerful a single choice could be. One act of kindness, one moment of empathy, had led me here, into a world I had never dared to dream existed. He left that day, but not before giving me a glimpse of what was coming next. A promise that my life would never be the same, that the choices I made from that moment onward would carry weight I could not yet see. I stood in my little living room, the walls suddenly feeling impossibly small, the world outside suddenly impossibly vast. I realized that everything I had known about people, about kindness, and about the way life worked was about to be rewritten. And as I watched him disappear into the street, blending once again into the world like an ordinary man, I felt something stir deep inside me, a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny, and the quiet, terrifying knowledge that nothing, not a single thing, would ever be ordinary again. I didn't know how far this journey would go, or what challenges awaited me, but I knew this. The world I had walked through, the streets I had navigated every day without notice, had suddenly become a place where anything was possible. And it all started with a small act, a sandwich, a jacket, a simple choice to see someone for who they truly were. I sat down on my worn couch that night, heart pounding, thinking about the truth I had glimpsed. How many people walked by others every day without seeing them? How many lives remained invisible because no one stopped, no one cared? And yet, here I was, standing at the edge of something incredible, because I had chosen to care. That day, I understood that life wasn't about the world noticing you. It was about noticing the world, seeing what others ignore, and having the courage to act, even when it seems small, even when it seems meaningless. Because sometimes, the smallest acts open doors to the largest truths, and sometimes, kindness has the power to change not just your life, but the world. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about that moment when he had revealed a glimpse of the truth. Every detail of his presence haunted me. The quiet confidence, the hidden strength, the way he had seemed so ordinary yet carried a secret too big for words. I didn't understand it fully yet, but something inside me knew that the next encounter would change everything, and it did. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. My heart jumped. It was him, standing there in simple clothes, but his presence filled the room with a weight I couldn't ignore. His eyes held a calm intensity, and I realized then that he wasn't just a stranger or a man who had wandered into my life by chance. He had purpose, power, and a story that no one could have guessed. "I need to show you something," he said, voice low but commanding. I followed him, curiosity and fear twisting together in my chest. We walked to a car parked a few streets away. It looked ordinary enough, but as soon as we stepped inside, I felt the air change, as if the world outside no longer mattered. The city lights blurred past the windows, and a strange excitement mixed with dread filled me. Then he began to speak, slowly, revealing details I could hardly process. He told me who he really was. Not just the beggar I had met, not just the man sitting silently in my living room, but the CEO of a company that controlled fortunes, investments, and decisions affecting thousands of lives. I stared at him, my mind spinning. It felt unreal. How could someone who looked like he had nothing, who had sat on my couch quietly, be someone so powerful? He explained that he had intentionally hidden his identity, walking among ordinary people, experiencing the world from a perspective most never could. He wanted to see who showed genuine kindness, who could see beyond appearances, who could act without expectation. And he had chosen me, not for money, not for fame, but because I had the courage and empathy that few possess. As I listened, emotions crashed over me like a wave I couldn't escape. Shock, disbelief, awe, fear, but also a strange pride, a quiet happiness that I had acted with a pure heart. I had been invisible to the world, yet I had been seen in a way that mattered more than anything I had ever imagined. Then came the moment that made my knees weak. He told me that my actions had not only changed his life, but could now change mine. He offered opportunities, introductions, and guidance that could open doors I had never dared to dream existed. But it wasn't just about wealth or status. He wanted me to understand something deeper, that kindness, courage, and humanity carry a power far beyond material success. They create connections, trust, and truths that nothing else can. I sat there, heart pounding, struggling to take it all in. My life had been ordinary, small, almost invisible, and yet, in a matter of days, it had been turned upside down. Every choice, every small act of empathy had led me here. And I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Life is fragile, and the moments we think are small often carry the weight of the unimaginable. He looked at me, eyes steady, and said, "You showed me the world as it should be seen. Not everyone notices, not everyone cares. But you changed everything by simply being human." I couldn't speak. Words failed me. I wanted to cry, to scream, to laugh. Every emotion at once. I had never felt so exposed, so seen, and so alive. The car stopped, and we stepped out into a quiet street. He turned to me and said, "The choice from this moment is yours. You can continue as before, living in what you know, or you can step forward and embrace a life shaped not just by chance, but by the choices you make." I felt the weight of his words settle over me. This was it, the turning point. Everything I had known, everything I had endured, everything I had believed about life and people was being challenged. I realized then that the world I had walked through every day, the streets where faces blur it into indifference, could be a place of transformation. that one person's courage, one act of kindness, could ripple farther than anyone imagined. And in that moment, I made a choice. I chose to step forward, to embrace the uncertainty, the challenge, and the opportunity. I chose to trust that the world, in all its chaos and injustice, could still reward honesty, compassion, and courage. As we walked back toward my small home, a sense of clarity washed over me. I understood then why this had happened, why he had chosen me, and why my small acts mattered. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about wealth. It was about humanity, empathy, and the quiet power we all carry when we choose to act with a true heart. I knew my life would never be the same. Every street, every stranger, every choice I made from that moment forward would carry a weight I hadn't felt before. And while fear lingered, excitement and hope surged stronger. I had seen the impossible, and I knew that ordinary people, like me, like anyone who dares to care, could touch extraordinary lives in ways the world often overlooks. That night, as I sat in my small, familiar home, I finally let myself feel it all. The fear, the awe, the excitement, and the unshakable truth that life could surprise us in the most unimaginable ways. I had taken a chance, shown a stranger kindness, and the world had answered in a way I would never forget. And I realized, as I looked out my window at the quiet streets, that sometimes the world waits for someone like you. Not for money, not for status, not for fame, but for the courage to care, the heart to act, and the bravery to see humanity where others refuse to look. After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The world felt different, and so did I. I walked through my familiar streets, but they didn't feel the same anymore. Each person I passed, each face I barely noticed before, seemed full of stories, struggles, and hidden truths. I realized how blind I had been to the lives around me, and how small acts, like giving a sandwich or of fearing a jacket, could carry unimaginable power. The days that followed were strange and exciting. He stayed in touch, checking on me, guiding me, and slowly revealing more about the life he had hidden. He told me stories of decisions, responsibilities, and challenges that I couldn't have imagined. The gap between my life and his was enormous, yet it no longer felt impossible. Somehow, our worlds had intersected because I had made a choice to care, to see a person beyond what the eyes could detect. I began to notice changes in myself. I walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and saw the world with sharper clarity. Small acts of kindness, once quiet and unnoticed, now felt like seeds I could plant into the lives of others. I helped neighbors, strangers on the street, and even my co-workers in ways I hadn't thought possible before. Every time I acted, I felt a spark, a ripple of connection that made the world seem both terrifying and full of possibilities at the same time. Yet, the transformation wasn't only internal. Opportunities began to appear in ways that felt almost magical. Doors opened, not because someone wanted to reward me with wealth or power, but because they saw something genuine in me. People noticed my heart, my empathy, and my courage to act without expectation. And each moment reminded me of him, the man who had come into my life seemingly by chance, yet with purpose so precise, it still amazed me. But it wasn't easy. The world had not changed overnight. I still faced hardships, challenges, and moments of fear. I worried about whether I was worthy of this attention, whether I could meet expectations I hadn't asked for. And sometimes I wondered if it was all too much. If one act of kindness could really carry such consequences. Yet, in those moments, I would remember his words. You showed me the world as it should be seen. Not everyone notices, not even.
Ryan cares. But you changed everything by simply being human. Those words became a guide, a light I clung to when doubt crept in. I realized that true change doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from the courage to act, to see humanity where others refuse, and to trust that even small choices can create waves far larger than you ever imagined. And slowly, I began to understand that this story wasn't only mine. It was a story of empathy, courage, and the quiet impact one person can have on another. It was proof that the world, though often harsh and blind, still responds to genuine acts of kindness. And it reminded me that the most extraordinary changes often start with the simplest decisions, like offering a sandwich, a jacket, or a hand when no one else would. I started to tell people about it, not the wealth, the secret identity, or the status, but about the power of noticing, of caring, and of trusting your instincts to act with humanity. Friends, strangers, even people who had ignored me before now listened, captivated by the simple truth that one person's courage can inspire countless others. Even as my life shifted in ways I never expected, I never forgot the streets, the people, and the quiet struggles that had once surrounded me. I realized that the world's hidden truths, its silent pains, and its invisible lives are waiting for someone to act, to care, to see. And maybe, just maybe, someone like me can make a difference, not by changing the world overnight, but by seeing it clearly, acting with heart, and trusting that every choice has the power to ripple far beyond what we can imagine. That realization, more than anything else, became my anchor. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was part of something bigger, something meaningful. And I knew, without doubt, that this journey had only just begun. I never imagined my life could change so completely because of one simple choice. Yet here I was, sitting in my little home, thinking about the man who had walked into my life like a stranger and left it transformed forever. At first, it felt unreal, like I was dreaming. But the memories, the lessons, the emotions, they were real. Every act of kindness I had shown, every decision to care when it might have been easier to look away, had brought me to this moment. That evening, I looked around my home, the walls still cracked, the roof still leaking, but somehow everything felt bigger, brighter, more alive. I realized that life isn't about where you live or what you have. It's about how you see the world, how you act in it, and the courage to treat every person as a human being, no matter what they look like, no matter what their story seems to be. I thought about the man I had helped, the beggar who wasn't really a beggar, the CEO who had hidden himself in plain sight. I remembered his quiet eyes, the way he had spoken with honesty, and the way he had made me see life differently. His secret was shocking, yes, but it wasn't the secret that mattered most. It was the truth he showed me. That empathy, courage, and kindness are far more powerful than money, fame, or status. They can change lives, open doors, and reveal truths that no one could have imagined. I started to reflect on the world around me. How many people suffer in silence? How many are ignored, unseen, and forgotten? How often do we judge by appearances, dismissing those who may hold stories more profound than anything we can imagine? That thought made my chest ache, and my heart swell at the same time. We walk past each other every day, unaware of the invisible lives around us. But a single moment of attention, a single act of kindness, can transform everything. From that day on, I promised myself that I would never ignore a person who needed help, never underestimate the impact of my choices, and never forget that humanity is the strongest currency in the world. I began sharing my story, not to bore, or to show off, but to remind others that every act of kindness matters, no matter how small it seems. A sandwich, a jacket, a few minutes of your time. They could all change the course of someone's life. I realized that my life, though ordinary in appearance, had become extraordinary in ways I could never have planned. I was stronger, braver, and more aware of the world's hidden truths. I knew now that small human acts, those things we often overlook or dismiss, can ripple farther than we ever imagine. One choice, one act of courage, had brought me here. One act had shown me the world as it should be, full of possibility, compassion, and hidden beauty. And yet, I also understood that not every story ends this way. Not everyone gets noticed. Not every act of kindness is rewarded. And not every person sees the truth behind appearances. That made me even more determined to act. To be the person who notices, who cares, who steps forward when the world turns away. Because if one choice changed my life so profoundly, imagine what countless small choices, made by people who dare to care, could do. I sat by my window that night, watching the quiet streets where it all began. I remembered his eyes, the note, the words he had spoken, and I understood something essential. Life doesn't ask for perfection, but it demands courage, empathy, and the willingness to act without expectation. Those are the qualities that reveal the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. Those are the qualities that make us human. And as I thought about it, I whispered to myself, if one small act can change everything, then what are we waiting for? How many lives could we touch if we only dared to see, to care, to act? I realized that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. It belonged to anyone who had ever wondered if their choices mattered. This was the lesson I carried with me. Life is fragile, fleeting, and unpredictable.
But within that fragility lies the power to change, to heal, and to connect. One act of kindness, one moment of courage, can echo farther than we can ever measure. And sometimes, it changes not just the life of the person receiving it, but the life of the person giving it as well. So I tell this story not as a tale of wealth or surprise, but as a testament to the power of humanity, to the invisible, the overlooked, the forgotten. I say this, your story matters, your choices matter, and the world is waiting for you to act. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, is a seed of change. And sometimes, just sometimes, it can grow into something that transforms lives in ways we never could have imagined. I don't know what tomorrow holds, and I don't know where life will take me next. But I do know this. I have seen the world differently now. I have learned the true value of empathy, courage, and compassion. And I will carry it with me in every choice, every action, and every moment of my life. Because kindness is not just a gift, it's a force that can move mountains, open doors, and reveal truths the world tries to hide. And maybe, just maybe, that's the story the world needs most of all.